So if I want that I out of the denominator when I'm working on something like this, so I don't mess it up again on the quiz retake or the unit test, I'm going to switch the sign of whatever the I is. So if it's positive, I make it negative. If it's negative, I make it positive. And then I'm going to multiply them together. So 9 times negative 3 would be negative 27. Don't forget my I. And then down below, 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And I times I is I squared. But one important thing I got to remember. I squared equals negative 1. So anytime I see I squared, when I get done multiplying or anything I do, I'm literally going to go and substitute that back in. So this literally means I'm replacing that I squared with negative 1. And negative times negative is positive 9. And it's like, oh, he's going to say and. And does anything divide into 9 and 27? Okay, so if we went with 3, we'd have negative 9i over 3. Is anything going to 9 and 3? 3. So I may have to do some reducing, and some of you are like, wow, that's a lot just for that little problem. But remember, as you get feeling more comfortable, some of you may look at this and say, you know what, I know I squared is negative 1, so negative 9 times negative 1, and you just skip right over to here. So don't get yourself into a big issue with that, but if you need to see the steps, and some of you do, again, just kind of work it out, and you'll get there. You're like, well, what if there's a negative? I don't know what to do if there's a negative then. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the negative on the 9, and I'm going to get rid of it, because then I'm not wondering where it might be. I actually can see where it's at. But otherwise, I do the same thing. Multiply through. Negative times negative is positive. Don't lose my I. 6 times negative 6 is negative 36. I squared, but I remember, oh yeah, I squared is negative 1. So this is negative 36 times negative 1, which is 36. And to make things even better for me, because every calculator almost now does this, I can't do anything with the I, but if you're not sure, I don't know about 54 over 36 if it reduces. Remember, you have a calculator that will even do that for you. 3i over 2. Okay? I can be in the numerator. That's okay. It just can't be in the denominator. You're like, okay, well, I might get that. That might be all right. But what if I start getting into stuff like what's going on down here? Like, what about number 4? Like, there's 3 and there's 6. Can I just do 3 minus 6? No, because this has I and this doesn't. So here's how we fix it. Again, we're just changing the sign on I. That hasn't changed. So whatever I do in one place, I have to do in both. So there's going to be a little more work this time. And I'm going to kind of reintroduce something I've talked about a couple of times, but we haven't really gotten in depth into it. So here I'm just going to distribute my 7. Again, when I distribute, I multiply. So 21 plus 42i. Down in the denominator, we're still having some issues with foiling here. So here's a suggestion. It's going to organize you, and it's going to make sure you don't forget stuff. I'm going to make a box. I'm going to put 3 minus 6i along one side and my 3 plus 6i along the other. And then I'm going to fill it in. And to fill it in, I multiply what's on the sides. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 6 would be 18i. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18i. And negative 6 times positive 6 is negative 36i squared. But then I remember. I go, okay, I see I squared. I squared is negative 1. So this is negative 36 times negative 1. And negative times negative makes this a positive 36. It just changes the sign on my 36. That's all I squared does. And so then I look and I go, okay, so 9 plus 36 is 45. 18i minus 18i just cancels out. I don't have any I in the denominator. Woohoo! But again, one little option. If anything divides into all of these, now that I can't do on the calculator directly, but I can divide a 3 out of all of these. So my last step, and if I'm not sure, I can just try each of them out and see how it works. But again, as long as there's no I in the denominator, I'm okay. So again, just a little bit of practice. Well, what if instead of a minus in the middle, what if there's a plus instead? Okay. Then I change it to a minus. Whatever the sign on I is, I just switch it. And I have to switch it. It can't be the same one or my eyes won't go away. You're like, ooh, but now it's like, do I have to do a box on this and a box on that? Uh-huh. Because again, it's about getting it right, not going 100 miles an hour. And sometimes things in life just take some time. So I'm like, okay, and it doesn't matter which set goes on which side of the box. I go ahead, I get those drawn in. I multiply the sides to fill in what's in the middle. Okay, again, we multiply to fill the box, and then we combine or add the like terms once the box is full. But then I remember, oh yeah, I squared is negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 28 is positive 28. So we'll get that cleaned up. And then I'm like, 10 plus 28 is 38. 70 minus 4 is 66. Okay, so I've got that first one done. You're like, dang, that's just the top. It is in this case. Now the bottom, oops, it'd help if I actually wrote them down and didn't mix those up. Again, multiply the edges to fill in the box. And when you do the bottom, the eyes should always, the single eyes that is, should always cancel out. Positive and negative 40i, okay? They cancel out. They're supposed to. I squared is negative 1. Negative times negative is positive. So then I just add those two up. 100 plus 16 is 116. And I always look just to see if there's some number that happens to divide into all three of those, even if it's little. And if you have to kind of break it in little pieces, that's okay. Like I notice, I think all these are divided by 2. They're all even numbers. So I grab my calculator, I divide each of those numbers by 2, and I see there's nothing left that goes in, and I'm set. But that's one thing we've got to do, just like when you reduce a fraction. I've got to be able to get those eyes out of the way. And sometimes it takes a little bit, but that's okay. Now that was one issue, because most of you on the problem that was on the quiz that was like this, you left it blank or just started putting interesting things down for me. So that can kind of help clean this up for you. The other thing that got some of you, where you actually made more work for yourself than you needed to, was when you got into problems like these. When you see plus or minus in the middle, you're not multiplying through anymore. You're just putting the like terms together and you're done. You're like, wait a minute. So like here it's just -1 plus 8. So this is just like 7i and I'm done. Yes. Okay, I'm not trying to FOIL anything out unless there's parentheses there. Okay, that are just next to each other. Like here, there's nothing in between them. That's multiply. This, I distribute my negative to there. Okay. Changes its sign. There's no other plain numbers but -7. But these are together, but I'm just combining. Don't multiply them. I owe somebody $7. I pay him 3 more. Now I owe him 10. I'm done. So we found a way to take the simple problems and make them hard. I don't want the simple problems to be hard. That's crazy. So you're like, well, now, however, when now there's nothing in between the parentheses, now I am multiplying. -2 times -4 is a +8i. -2 times +3 is a +6i squared, but don't you dare leave it that way. I squared is -1. So 6 times -1 is -6. I'm done. And then the last couple of things I'm going to give you a heads up on in this page. I'm not going to do them completely, but I'm going to give you a heads up. 17, don't just distribute that through and think you're done. Box this sucker out. Okay, I'm even going to cross that out, so don't even think about it. We're going to multiply that out. And my one other job, you're like, what if there's lots of things? Multiply the first two together. Negative times negative, 32i squared. Oh, wait a minute. I squared is -1. So 32 times negative 32. And then multiply and distribute it through. It's the details that are tending to get us right now. And I don't want that for you. But again, we're just going to work on the details some more. Okay? That basically covers our issues with I. Rationalizing, combining like terms, whatever it happens to be. So then, oh dear. Some of you got whacked for an upwards of 8, 10 points on the quiz because we just went into blank mode on this. So, okay. We're going to roll with these. But just a reminder, if you want to have all the steps written out for you, we've got all the steps in the 5.5 notes, and they're also all in the 5.5 video if you want to talk through it. Because we're going to talk through this, but I'm not going to write all the steps back down. So again, what we're going to do is we need to get the x's alone on one side. That's my first job. So this plus 65, I'm going to minus to the other side. Bless you. And I'm also going to lock in a little bigger with my print here. Just a second here. I should have done this. Oh boy. Middle of the video. We're out of focus. We're in focus. We're out of focus. Mind of its own. Okay. Once we have the x's together, and some of you got part of this before, that number in front of x, my b value, we divide that by 2, and then we square it. That step never changes. That 81 gets added to both sides. And it's like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. Whether it's memorizing lines for something or playing a sport, doesn't matter. the more you practice, the better it's going to get. So here's my next part, and I just added negative 65 and 81 on the right side. We need to get what's called a binomial term. To get it, I do one of two things. I either ask myself, what do I square to get 81? And again, some of you still don't know your perfect squares. You've got to get this down. Is 9, and steal the sign from the middle. Or if you really want the easy way to do it, b divided by 2 number, well, that's positive 9. Just steal it. Because once you get here, life is grand. I don't distribute it. I don't FOIL it. I use the square root, because the squared and the square root are inverses. They're opposites. Whenever I take the square root, I do plus minus. Square root of 16? 4. It even turns out nice this time. And then my last step, I got to get x alone. And if there's no radicals left at this point, I really do want you to go ahead and get the two answers. Negative 9 plus 4, get my answer. Negative 9 minus 4, get my answer. Okay. Don't make life hard on yourself. We're just going to try practicing some of these. Okay. I want to do number 2 with you too. I want to do a couple of each of these so you've got some good examples to work with. And then if you do get stuck after you've tried it and actually worked it through, come and show me. Okay, I'll still work with you through it. Get the v's alone on one side, minus the 47 over. And it's just getting used to that process. Okay, so we got negative 18, that's my b. And when I square it, I should always get a positive answer out. If you're not using parentheses. And we got to do that, otherwise our answers are going to be off. So we'll add that 81 to both sides. And no, just because it happened to be that way these first couple doesn't mean you're going to be adding 81 every time. If you don't have colors, use the blanks like I am there by underlining it to let you see where that step's going to be. Now this time, my 9's going to have a minus in the middle. And there's two ways I can find that. Again, my b value is negative. Or when I did b divided by 2. Okay, I noticed both of those. And negative 47 plus 81 is 34. And then it's just that last step process again. Square root it. Those guys go away. Plus minus. And I try to break down the 34, but in this case, there's nothing I can do with it. So it just stays under the radical. And I add my 9 over. And again, I can't combine these because this isn't under a radical and this is. So that's as far as I'm going to be able to go. So if it cleans up nice, we'll go ahead and get the answers. If it doesn't clean up nice, well, then we got to work through it a little more. Okay, so that's one of our ways we completed the square. The other one is on the back here. And then we just about got this locked down. Okay. Solve each equation by completing the square. Rewrite in vertex form. Get all the constant terms to the right side first. Remember, here's my vertex form. Get all constant terms, all plain old numbers, all things that don't have x to the right side before you start. So get that 91 out of there. And now we start the process. Same as we did when we were completing the square on the other side. Take my b, the number in front of x. Divide it by 2. Square it. What's that?
Is that supposed to be a
Oh dear. Thank you. Oh, and Mr. H did something else he didn't want to do. Dang it. Still get me a positive 16, but that's going to change my value here in a minute. We're not going to be able to rewrite in vertex form because Mr. H did something goofy. How does Mr. H want to fix this? I know what we're going to do. Okay, we're going to finish this one this way. Then I'm going to make the tweak so we can do this in vertex form. So we're going to do one more regular, and then we'll get there. Okay. So x squared minus 8x plus 16, 85 plus 16. So let's see here. Negative. What's going to go with my x in the parentheses on the left side? Negative 4. Because again, I just steal that from my b divided by 2 part. And then square root it. Now here's something different. I have a negative underneath my radical. That's no good. How do I take care of that? Pull an I out. And in this case, again, the 69 won't break down any more than that. I always want to try, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. And then I'm set. We've got to fix a couple of things here on the other ones, so just kind of stick with me here on this. So what we're going to do is in all these, we've got to get, I didn't get my y equals on here when I put these together. That's all on me. So we are going to fix this up. Now Mr. H is just going to hope this cleans up nicely. All right. Let's see if Mr. H is brilliant or just did something silly. We're going to find out. Oops, make sure some of you are getting that. I'll bring the 10 back down in a second if we need it. Okay, let's try out number 7 here. Slight change to what we're going to be doing. I still want to take my b. I still want to divide it by 2. I still want to square it. But when I'm being asked to put it in vertex form, I don't get all the x's alone first like I did on number 6. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add it to the y side. And I'm going to add it to the x's part. On the other side. So once I do that, now I can get this part into my binomial form. Again, just steal it from here. And since I'm trying to get it into y equals, my last step is to minus the 16. And I get it set that way. Okay. I want to peek at one more this way too, because I want to make sure I get you a couple of them. My apologies that we didn't get it that way set on 6. That would have been made life a little easier on us. So if we do that for 8, same thing, take my b, divide by 2, square it. I'm going to add that to both sides. Once I've added that to both sides, which gets me my perfect square trinomial over on the right, I go back, I look at my b divided by 2, it's a positive 6. And then I just minus the 36 over, because I want y by itself. And I get there. So again, this gives you an opportunity to get a couple more in, and if some of you are going to do the retake, to be able to go back and actually do the 5 or 6 of these that we had originally that you needed to do to kind of get some extra practice and get feeling more comfortable with it. Okay? So that takes care of completing the square and complex numbers, our i's. The other thing we ran into some issues with that we're going to fix up is on this other sheet, this quadratic review, and just a couple of reminders again. When I get to problems like we have over here, okay, let's say we're doing something like, I don't know, I guess we'll start with number 2. Get x squared alone before you do the square root. If it's already alone, cool. I'll take the square root. But then there's other little things I've got to remember. I got to remember it's plus minus. I got to remember if there's a negative under there, I got to take an I out. And then if that weren't enough, I've got to look at my 12 and decide, can I break it down? And if there's a perfect square that's a factor, again, 6 and 2 would not work here because 6 or 2, they're not perfect squares. Then I got to fix that. The 2 gets to come out with I. The 3 is still underneath. So there's lots of little things that can get me if I'm not watching it. If I was doing number 5, I look at that and I go, okay, got to work on getting this alone. Get the 3 out of there. And this is where some of you got yourself into trouble Friday. You looked at that 4 and you're like, ooh, it's a perfect square. I'm going to square root it right now. Don't do it. It's not alone yet. Whoa. Once that x squared is alone, now I can take the square root. Now I get my plus minus. And I'd pull out the I right away, but then I look and I'm like, oh, square root of 16 is 4, so just 4i. Not the square root of 4i, okay, just 4i. And you're like, okay, that might not be too terribly awful. And so then the last type on this side, there's the awful fractions. Don't let them bother you, just get rid of them. Okay, if there's a number out here, I'm not going to distribute it through. I'm going to multiply, in this case, by the reciprocal. Now, if this would have been a whole number like 4, I'd divide both sides. But here, I'm going to multiply both sides by that 4 to get rid of that. So that gets me a little closer. Again, we're multiplying. Again, I still don't want to FOIL this out. I don't want to distribute. The only way I can get that rid of now is to do the square root. Plus or minus. Remember, there's a negative. Pull the I out. Square root of 100 is 10. 10i. and then get the x alone, so minus the 1 over. And I'm a happy camper. And then I think there's one last thing on the back if I'm peeking. Oh yeah, more opportunities for that. Okay. And then on the back of this is just some more playing around with completing the square and getting it into vertex form. But I'm actually going to be nice and do 16 with you, because enough of you missed this on the quiz, even though I don't have another one, but we've done it before, so we'll just kind of hope this clicks it. Area of a rectangle. Area is length times width. So area, 64, equals length times width. So I distribute that through. Because unfortunately, I can't do solving by roots with this because I have an x squared and an x. So I have to factor it. Oh, the F word. Yeah, we got to factor. But here's a nice thing on this one. And again, it's because I have enough practice at it that I think about these things. Do 2, 8, and 64 have a number in common? Even if it's little? 2. By taking the 2 out, I don't have to do slide and divide anymore. I just got to factor this part. So I need 2 numbers that multiply to negative 32 and add to 4. And again, if this is not your strength, take the calculator, divide numbers in, and make yourself a list until you've got a little of everything, and then you just go, okay, I know that being negative 32, I'm going to have one of each sign. So when I put the negative on, I need 2 of these to be 4 apart. 1 and 32 are not 4 apart. Nope. These are, but I want it to be positive 4. So the positive number has to be bigger. Set those equal to 0. And then use a little common sense. Can a side of a rectangle be 4? Sure. Can a side of a rectangle be negative 8? No. And find the dimensions. Okay, I plug in 4 for x. This side's 4. I plug in 4 for x. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 8. 16 by 4. 16 times 4 is 64, and I've got it. So again, whether you're doing the retake or not, this is stuff that's showing up on the unit test. We're also going to do a little quiz at the end of the week based on this stuff that's going to keep coming back again. So you need to work through these. If you're doing the retake, it's necessary. They're going to be on the next homework check when we do that anyway. Might throw an exit slip in there, who knows. But tomorrow we are going to start working on our last part of this, which is graphing inequalities. So you will need a book. I will want to put some problems up, but not all of them. So you're going to need to remember to